welcome back to Get Tales. In this episode, we'll be talking about VIPER. This is a useful way to break up a program, to categorize the moving parts. There's a number of things that are views. It's code that makes up views. And the view is what faces the user. This is all the new picture screens, things that you create. In this, I have a whole animation side to the views. I've decided to put all the animations as things to do with the view. I also create a pattern view and a pattern detail view, and also a screen metrics module. I felt that should also go inside of a view. What is that? Okay. We'll get to what this is. What this is serving as to me is a way to get a number of different numbers into the code, which would otherwise be hard to do. There's a number of annotations you can see here, and it's an interesting looking file. Even the whole class is annotated as a module. This is all dagger working here, and we'll get to this, but you can expect to see a module file in pretty much every directory that we're going to go through, oftentimes related to a view or related to other members in that directory. I try to keep those two together because there's not really a clear intuition always that they're meant to be there aside from their name and their placement. There's not a click-through ability. It's not integrated into the IDE very obviously. That's the views. Close this back down. Behind each view is a presenter, right? The presenter is a thing that is dealing with touch, right? Because people are going to be touching the screen as some sort of input that has to change the way that the program is going to run. And also, the presenters go the other way as well. They take, based upon the data, they help define what the view is going to look like. Which of these views and these layouts are going to be presented and how. So, you'll see action handlers. This is my term for things that collect user actions. So this collects actions in the gallery, and this collects actions in the detail. And then there's these adapters. These are list adapters, are familiar to most Android developers. They're how you connect a list to a view. And indeed, this is what the presenter is going to be doing. What are the ways that list is being shown to the user, presented. There's also an SVG detail adapter, so this will be adapting SVG details to a view. Let's check out these action handlers just for the fun of it. This one only has one action that's called of it, which is return to gallery. It's going to accept a view. All the action handlers accept views. Well, not all of them. All of the click action handlers, all the ones that will be coming from the on click, as opposed to on touch. On touch, we can actually determine where the person is touching, how long they're touching. There's the up touch. You can really kind of get deep into it. And I believe this code gets to do that. The view, however, I know that this is just a on-click coming into this thing I've called return to gallery. What does it do? gives the animator a hook to the UI. So first says animator, go back to the gallery, and then gives it a gallery binding that is able to get from the view. This is using a function, or a method, sorry, inside of the data binding util. Each word like this is a file. This file is called detail action handlers. It's a class. This too is a class. It's being generated by, or it's a class in a library of data binding that allows the data binding to occur. A data binding library that's included with the Android SDK. It takes views and it'll spit out bindings. This, if I go control click, is itself a generated file off of the layout activity gallery. What does it do? Then after it returns to the gallery, it says release this to the backpressed repo, which this animator would be referencing. This and this object should be unfamiliar to you, right? They're not things that any programmer would know. They're classes that I made up myself, right? When we're programming, we're in the business of making up nouns. Like this even, it says handlers, but it is a noun. And this noun has a constructor, and the noun has a method. So this is things the noun can do, and this is how you create the noun. These are methods I have written on these nouns. And we'll get to these. We're not going to dig into them right now. Behind the presenters are interactors. And these are the things that are going to go reach out to the frameworks and get the data. Other people might know this as a service layer. It's a lowercase s service. And interactors do, you might say, all the heavy lifting. The asynchronous protocols often occur there, where you're waiting for something to come back from the network and the internet, and meanwhile you're delivering a cache to the user, and then you're going to update that cache and update the user's interface as well. All that sort of thing you're going to see inside the interactors. Startup, I have these interactors. This is the entire application. You only write one file. It's called something something application. This is how it starts. Just, we don't have to pay too much attention to what it does and these components. We'll get to all that. But this is the application class that I have. And this is the one thing that you can call a singleton. It's the base of all singletons inside of the application. If you don't know what a singleton is, don't worry, we'll get there. Here's a repository of where all the patterns are. Here it's actually just creating them. This here is RxJava. We'll get to that. And there's a module associated with it. So it's just returning a new pattern repository. Here's this dagger annotations again. So if you talk to the person who came up with the term VIPER, originally was just calling it VIP, but felt that was kind of an ostentatious name. So thought of two other things to put in that you'd like to categorize, and what you could call them. And they're valid categories. I think it's good to have them separate. One is entities. One makes up a number of types while they're programming in object-oriented programming. I put my view models into this. I don't think I'm using this at all. Oh, I can clean this up entirely. Previously I was using this as a type of thing. This is a interface of sorts. It's an abstract class. And this is something that's being passed as like a wrapped up piece of data between maybe an interactor and a presenter. It's the nugget that's being passed back and forth. So there we have the view, the thing that makes the view click into place. I guess that might be more like the business logic. What makes it, what satisfies all of those requirements for data in the UI, the interactors do that. The things that are being passed between these different layers. And right, this one I put, oh yes, I organized this well. I put the metadata in the interactions. This is telling me it's between the interactors and the presenters, and this is something that's used between the presenters and the view. Indeed. And lastly, we have routers. And routers, in iOS they call them wireframes. This is the logic of what screen follows what. And there is something that I have for that. There might be a it's the activity. Now, this organization into VIPER is purely voluntary. This is just my way of organizing things. You can make these however you like to do this. However, the activity is an unwieldy friend that you work with as an Android programmer. It is the it's the God class. It's the program that's running. Everything starts with this onCreate right here. So when one starts, maybe actually you're not using app compatibility, you may find it very useful too. It's nothing to really add it on. As you're using this, it's going to get lifecycle calls. I've chosen to handle 2 of them because I think I can. And also I've picked up an on-back pressed here as well. There's also, in between these, there's a on start, there's a on resume, and on pause, a on stop, There's this on destroy. There's a number of other ones as well that we can get into. However, I chose for this to only run these two because I think I'm hot like that. So here is the activity class being extended, and the problem with this is always, in my opinion, is that a lot of other methods get shoved into it other than these life cycle methods, and they all kind of, it gets really messy. It gets longer than 75 lines, let's say, and people start depending on shared fields inside of this, and it gets complicated for people to fully understand what it is they've written even. So I like to keep it clean and making it only a router by taking everything else out of it, all the on touches and stuff like that, putting it into the presenters and the interactors. Although really, I imagine one quickly starts knowing to make a service layer. Something like an interactor occurs that's separate from activity fairly quickly. However, further teasing stuff out into the presenters, into the view, allows us to just have this do the thing that it is good at doing, which is the lifecycle methods. This makes, I think, working with the activity a bit safer, generally speaking. Here's my backpressed repo. Here's a scope. This is another dagger feature, and this is part of what is really beautiful about it, that you can name elements of your program that are necessary in some places and not in others, so they can be turned off or not started even until they're needed. So you might have like if you had a significant portion of your app that had a non-logged in user mode to it, then that's you might have a login user scope, that itself is inside of the application scope. So that's the VIPER. Everything fits pretty nicely into there, I have to say. Alright, so let's see what it will be next. I say we're going to start going through the Git history, so let's get on that.